Hi, everyone. Barry McGuire here for Barry McGuire's Creative Real Estate Education Group. We like to help folks who like real estate, any kind of real estate, really. We love buy and hold, but we focus more on the creative side of things, agreements for sale, rent to own, wholesaling, that sort of stuff. We have very interesting people on. We have investors on talking about deals. We have experts in tax and insurance and mortgages, all of which we hope will move your investing life along. We teach focus workshops. Just had a really successful one May 7th and 8th down in Calgary, the Rapid Cash Program. I love doing that workshop. 2 full days of learning about creative strategies. And today I'm pleased to say that we've got Darcy Marler. Darcy Marler is along to talk to us for an hour or so about developing. Now, I'm really, really interested in hearing that because although I've been a real estate lawyer for 45 plus years, I haven't done much on the developing side of things. Yeah, sort of peripherally done a few things, but Darcy, on the other hand, has, just looking at what he's told me, he's owned over 90 properties with 240 doors, so some multifamilies, $44 million worth of property. He's done land development, land assembly, new construction, including 45 new homes, condo conversions, short and long-term rentals, employed the BRRRR strategy, fix and flips. He's also written 4 books on real estate. He's 3 ahead of me and has an online course on land development. So without any further ado, let's bring Darcy on and start talking to him about the development side of things. Hey, Darcy.
Hey, Barry, how you doing?
I'm doing well. Thank you very much. You look like you're in the pink and having fun.
I'm enjoying life to the fullest these days. Yeah, for sure.
That's my boy. All right. So I do like to hear what folks did prior to really getting involved in real estate. Even, you might have dabbled in it for a while and then turned out to be a full-time guy. But where did you start out in life and living and working before you got into real estate? Just tell us a bit about that progression.
Well, I got my first real estate book when I was 15 years old back in the 80s, when everything was buy real estate with no money down.
Yes. Yeah.
So I was enamored by it. And my dad, who's a farmer, I grew up just outside of Sherwood Park on a farm. In his retirement, he started to dabble in kind of multifamily. Now, he never pulled the trigger. So I went off and got a degree in computers. I did that for about 15 years. I was in South America, actually, for 5 years in the 90s. Got burnt out. When I came back in 2000, I said, you know what, I'm going to do that real estate thing. And Dad kind of lived vicariously through me for a while. And so I've done everything, as you said, everything in residential real estate. I've picked off at one time or another. I had trouble focusing, I guess, was my biggest thing. So whatever there was a new shiny trinket, I tried that. So.
Yeah. Well, you've done a lot. I mean, there's a lot of strategies on the real estate side of things, and you've done a lot of things. But now, I mean, today we're talking about land development. So is that the one that kind of stuck? The one you like the most? The one that you focused on more and have ended up being?
What ended up happening was I kind of went through a severe depression in like 2018. I'd done this for 17 years and I just hated it, to be honest. I hated real estate. And that was because on the one side I had my rentals. So I've had close to 1,000 tenants and I'm hard pressed to say anything that I really enjoyed about that journey, to be honest with you. And then on the project side, the flips, the new construction, somebody told me when I was started out, why are you giving away profits to a middleman? You should be the on-site supervisor. So I was on-site supervisor. I literally went to Rona twice a day for 17 years, at least once on the weekend. And I hated that too, right? So I was going to quit the whole thing. But then I said, well, don't throw the baby out with the bathwater. What do you like? So I kind of went through a little navel gazing and figured out my why and what I like and what I did. And I said, you know what? I really like that land development, new construction. And maybe you just don't have to be the on-site guy. I always kind of figured myself as a pretty smart guy. I don't know why it took me 17 or 18 years to figure that out, that you didn't actually have to do the part you did like. But so now I'm back specializing in land development because I really love the creativity of it and the planning and all that.
I think that's a really important point for people to hear, that when you say real estate, or even narrow that down and say creative real estate, there are a lot of facets to that couple of descriptive words. And I really do notice it, that people kind of, they try a few things and they end up finding bits of it they like. And like you, there's bits they don't like at all. So folks, you could learn from Darcy here. You don't have to do the part of it you don't like for 17 or any other number of years. So
you can switch. And the funny thing was, I was, you and I met through Rain, but I was a perennial kind of on the stage at awards time. I was, really going after the awards. So I was player of the year for many years. I was renovator of the year, but I'm winning awards for this stuff I don't even like, right? So it was kind of, so.
Yeah, there's that part of it as well. And then, maybe some more of that navel gazing you were talking about to go, okay, let's get down to it here.
Yeah.
All right. Well, with that background, you and I prepped for this a little bit. We emailed back and forth a little bit, and you believe that, land development may be the next big thing in real estate investing. And that says a lot, because there's a lot going on in real estate.
Yeah.
So what has brought you to the conclusion that it's the land development side that people should be thinking about taking a better look at?
I think there's, we'll get to this in a second, there's these micro strategies that allow normal people to do it. So we'll get into that in a sec. But as far as the next big thing, as I was putting this course together, talking to people all across the country and even into the US, and it's really, really hard to find stuff to flip or properties to cash flow, right? Especially in Ontario, BC, and even now getting into Alberta. So what else is there? So again, focusing on land development, I think the opportunities are going to be in this kind of part of the world. I'm talking to these investors and they're saying, well, if I can't find something to buy, maybe I can build it myself. Or the other big thing that's happening is mass immigration. Our good fair prime minister loves to open up the taps and bring new people in, which is great, but we've already got a housing crisis, right? So where's everybody go? Well, whenever there's a problem, you can make money with the solution, right? So there's going to be a massive move to build stuff, and all three levels of government are already working on that to various degrees. It is a local problem. It's really the local municipalities that have to be better, but the provincial and federal governments are putting pressure on them and, creating programs to create things to build. So, builders need lots, right? So if there's ability to kind of create lots, there's profit there. The other thing I've noticed too that's going to add to this is that, and you've probably noticed this with your rentals too, the younger demographics, the younger kids, they don't like old anymore, right? Like they don't like that 1930s bird or renovated house. They want something new. And even me, I'm 55 now. And when I sell this house in a couple of years, I'm not moving into a 1930s bird property either, right? Like, so there's going to be this real push to new, push to quality, so to speak. And so there's going to be a move to increase inventory, to densify, to build new. You're going to see a lot of these older buildings torn down and replaced by duplexes, fourplexes, multifamily. And there's going to be a massive opportunity, I think, for people, regular investors, not just the big boys, to get in there and create opportunity and profit from that.
That makes sense. The papers and media are full of the housing crisis, and the next page talks about immigration and how that's ratcheting up, and so
I'm not sure my good prime minister has figured that out yet, but whatever.
I'm not sure either. But that's where they're pushing, and I've talked to various property managers, and they have said to me, the new properties rent so much easier than the old style. So all of that is kind of matching up with what I've observed, not in as deep a way as you have, but I understand now why you're saying that it's real estate will be the next big thing. Land development be the next big thing in real estate investing.
I specialized for a long time in burring multifamily, right? And I specialized in nasty. I bought some really, really nasty buildings, and some of my stuff you literally can't get insurance for anymore, right? Like, so that older stuff, it's really, really hard now to get replacement insurance on that stuff if you're an investor. So you're going to see that kind of creep into the market and make it really, really hard on these old buildings as well. So
even though you took a terrible building and turned it into a gem, it's still hard to get insurance on that.
Unless you do the whole thing, unless you really are replacing that old aluminum wiring and the old fuse box with the new breaker style. And unless you're getting rid of the old, poly B and getting new, like you really have to spend the money to do it well, new roof, new everything, right? So at that point, you kind of look at it, why am I saving this 1940s, piece of whatever and doing that much work to it? You might as well knock it down and build new. So.
All right. Well, when I think when a lot of people think about land development, they think about Brookfield and Melcor and Karma and giant developers who buy land by the section and hold it for 20 or 30 years and slowly bleed it into the marketplace. That's, I think a common picture of developing being just for the big guys. And so very difficult for someone on his own or a few people, limited means. So micro strategies, I like the sound of that. Tell us about the micro strategies.
Well, I'm on a bit of a mission to prove to the world that not everything is flips and rentals and their stepchild BRRRR, right? So right from the 1980s when I started, it's always been, everything about real estate and education has been about rentals and flips, right? So I think, like I said, these micro strategies exist. So yes, most people just kind of new construction or land development, they think that's for the big boys, so it goes right outside. But you can do that on a smaller scale, couple $2-3 million. If you're in that league, you can do do the same thing on 5 acres or 6 or 7 acres, where you can kind of buy a little piece of dirt next to one of the big builders. Cut that up into smaller sections, make sure each lot is serviced with a little internal road, and you can sell that. But for more realistically, for smaller and mid-sized investors, you can take that 1930s house that I've been referencing on a 50-foot lot, knock it down, subdivide it into 2, make sure both lots are serviced, and sell that to a builder. Or you can build the duplex yourself. Another strategy, another micro strategy, is to find a piece of land that's got some excess land, sell the excess. And then the cool thing about that is then you can do 3 things with the house or the building that's still there. You can sell it and just walk away from the whole project with a profit, or you can develop that land as well, or you can take the profits from the sale of the excess land and put that against the mortgage of the existing building. And where maybe you might have been having trouble cash flowing that building before, that's an opportunity now to really increase the cash flow as a rental. So it kind of mixes the 2 strategies of land development and rental. Another micro strategy is to buy 2 or more lots side by side, tear down the houses, and get that lot ready for a builder to build in a multifamily apartment, or to maybe build side by side townhouses. But the other one I really like too is what they call upzoning, where you just change the zoning and the density. So if you can move the highest and best use enough, you can really make a really good profit from going to something, let's say zoned single family home, and move it to where you can build 8 units on that land. That really increases the value of that land, and you don't even have to go on the ground and do any work with the pipes, right? So these are kind of micro strategies that allow smaller investors to play as well.
Those are all I think good strategies and strategies I've seen my clients work on over the years. They're doing the developing of those various sorts of micro strategies, using those micro strategies that you've talked about, and I'm watching them do it. So, I'm kind of familiar with all those. The chunk of land that's got a property on it, but it's big enough that you can subdivide off another chunk. I've had a few clients do that very successfully, and it's been great for them. Not so much on the finding a piece of land and upzoning it. That's is that maybe another step up the development ladder when you've got to make a rezoning app as opposed to those other micro strategies?
Yeah, it depends. What I tell people, what's crazy about this country of ours is that the amount of time it takes to get approval can vary so greatly. So if you've just got in your head, land development's too hard, it's probably because you've heard a horror story from a municipality that's not great. But you can go anywhere from, you can make an application and get that approved in 2 months. Other places like Edmonton, it'd be about 4 or 5 months. Calgary's maybe 5 or 6. There's other places, a year. Some places like Victoria or Vancouver or Toronto are 1.5 to 2 years, right? So it really, really depends where you are and what you want to do. So try to pick a municipality if you're investing that's easier to do it. And then another tip I have is to try to go with the flow. Like if you want to maybe do develop some land that's going to be side by side townhouses, maybe find land that's already zoned that way. If you want to actually do the on-site kind of work, if you can find an area that's longer, like let's say you're in Ontario and it takes 14 months in your specific area to get an application, well, that's a plus for you. You can turn that into a positive. If you take the time to move the zoning from X to Y, the builder doesn't want to do that time. So now you've value added the land and you can sell it to the builder. So just a general rule of thumb, if you're in an area where it's quick, then it's probably the benefit is to actually physically do the on-site work. If you're in a longer area, then just changing the paperwork and stuff can be a real benefit.
Yeah, I get that. It's you can turn that negative into a positive. Not nobody, but most people don't want to put in the time that it takes to in a longer timeline municipality to get that done. So you give them a newly upzoned property on a plate. That's gold for somebody who just wants to get going and get building.
Well, that's the other thing too, is that, I did renos for years. I've done lots of renos, and it's extremely time consuming, right? Like especially if you are doing the on-site supervision yourself, you're there every day getting the trades ready. Oops, the drywaller didn't show up today. What am I going to do? You're off to Rona twice. You're coming home tired, and then you still got to do the accounting and paperwork. So the great thing about land development, these micro strategies, is that your team's going to do most of the work. Like you're busy up front finding the deals, finding the areas to invest in, putting the money together, working with your partners, using one of the your strategies, agreements for sale, options for whatever to acquire the land. That's a real big plus if you can get the land just tied up without buying it during this 5-6 month approval process, let's say. But after that, your team takes over and they do most of the work. Your civil engineer or planner, they're going to do the planning and the back and the forth with the city. So there's really not a lot for you to do. And then if you are doing one of the strategies where you're actually putting pipe in the ground or working on site, you're not doing that either, right? So you're controlling the money, you're making sure everybody gets paid and you're doing your construction loan. But from an actual return on time or getting your life back, these strategies are really good because your team is doing kind of most of the work. So I like that as well. It's very, even though you may be waiting, a year to get the permit if you're on the wrong spot, it's really not you doing the work. It's kind of just happening off to the side while you're living your life and the team's doing it. So.
I get that. Team. We always talk about team. Anybody who does anything successfully in the end needs a team. They don't end up doing it by themselves because there's always too much going on. So for the kind of the micro strategies and the folks we're talking to today, let's talk about the team.
Sure.
Who are the essential team members for them?
Well, no doubt the most important person is your lawyer for sure. That's always the biggest person on your team. So realtor is really big. Your realtor kind of comes in 3 times. One is to help you find the original lot. 2 is when you're trying to do your back and napkin, what can I sell the lots for? Your realtor is going to give you some good comparables. And then when you've got the lots, your realtor can help sell them. There's the lawyer and accountant as always. I strongly suggest you have a mortgage broker for this one because it's a different world kind of funding and financing a land development play, whichever MicroStrategy you're using. So you want to have a mortgage broker that's kind of really rooted in that world and knows the players. And then the biggest one is either a planner or a civil engineer, depending where you are in the country. They call them different things. So that's a civil engineer that's going to do the the bylaw check to see how many it's currently zoned X. What can I move it to? Can we play with the density and increase the density? They're the ones that are going to be drawing up all the plans and the blueprints and interfacing with the city, as I said before. So you really want a nice, good, strong team that's made up of those people. Yeah.
So the planner, civil engineer, is the piece that most people wouldn't have, and I guess a planner, civil engineer could also not only do plans and interface with the city, they could also do the upzoning if that's what was required. They could do that as well, couldn't they?
Right. And even then, let's say you're doing a full land development where you're actually the raw land development where you're actually putting pipe in the ground or all that, they're going to be the probably somebody from their team is going to be physically doing the on-site work as well. So, and then they're probably going to have a cost consultant on-site as well to help you firm up your numbers and stuff. So it's really a really important member of your team.
Well, we talked a little bit about the benefits that real estate investors can achieve from the micro strategies. Getting back, recovering some of your life. Let's talk more specifically about why you think or what you think the benefits are. And if we've talked about them, already, it's fine to do a review because people should hear why this is a good idea.
The potential for larger numbers is there in land development in any of these micro strategies. Like, for example, I've got someone from the course that just in Calgary, they did the upzoning, kind of changed the paperwork, and they were able to make $134,000 in 2.5 months. I have a private Facebook group for my students. I've got an open public Facebook group as well. And someone from the group was posting a couple of months ago that in Ontario, they did just the upzoning and made $300,000 in 6 months, kind of thing.
Excellent.
Land development or knocking down that old house, you can get into those kind of numbers as well. Like I said, with a lot less time and work. So as comparing it to someone who's just doing a lot of flips, like I said, it takes a lot of time and effort, a lot of churn, as I call it, because you'll have 15 or 20 different trades and material suppliers and service people in and out of your building when you're doing your flips, and they're all getting paid, and hopefully you do too, but maybe not. Where again, your team's doing there's a lot less involved in getting pipe in the ground or doing what you're doing there, but it's also a lot less of your time. So the potential for profit is there. So you're making potentially more money with less work is really the main benefit to these micro strategies.
That's big. It's as we talk about it, and as you've alluded to how much personal time has gone into implementing the other strategies in your own experience over the years. I mean, what this ends up being is kind of brain work, isn't it? It's you understand what the strategy is, and then you use your brain instead of running around in your brawn to do things.
Yeah. And used to be when, in my day and your day too, is if you didn't know what you were doing as a male coming out of school, you'd go into construction, right? So there's all kinds of people that can physically do the construction work. Yeah. The real strength here is, as you say, it's the upfront work. Mm-hmm. If you can become really, really good at finding the opportunities or understanding the zoning. Let me just give you an example. So sure. In Edmonton, let's say to avoid, let's say you find a property that's zoned single family and you wanted to increase the zoning or increase the density, you'd have to apply for that. As these municipalities, Edmonton's really kind of in the forefront of this too. They've basically said they want to stop the urban sprawl. They want to double, but yet they want to double the population of Edmonton by, I believe, 2050. So how are you going to do that? Well, you need densification and increasing the inventory. So if you look at the community of Garneau, just south of the river there, mm-hmm. they've actually taken a several block radius, and they've already changed the default zoning of the entire neighborhood to low rise apartment building. So you're always going to have to apply for a development permit because the city needs their fees and they need to know what you're doing, but you wouldn't have to apply for a zoning change because they've already done it for you, right? So basically they're saying with kind of blinking neon lights, come on, developers, we no longer want Garneau to be a 1920s and 1930s play. We want all this stuff done. We want them all knocked down in the next few years and replaced by higher density and newer stuff. So if you get a forward-thinking community and a forward-thinking city like that, that can go a long way to make your life easier. As I say, don't paddle upstream.
Don't paddle upstream. Well, I mean, that emphasizes what you said earlier, is that there is a vast difference provincially and across the country in how municipalities look at development and how long it takes to do stuff. I mean, my clients some of my students in Toronto are, I mean, they're aghast at how long it takes and how much it costs it's unbelievably expensive in Toronto and environs to do any kind of development work. The fees and charges from City Hall are enormous, and on top of all the time it takes. So vetting the municipality where you want to work and finding a municipality that not only is talking the talk, but is walking the walk, because it's easy to say, Edmonton is saying, okay, double the size of the city, but we don't really want to increase our footprint, or as little as possible. You got to find a municipality that when you show up with your project that goes, well, I'm 100 meters from the new LRT station. I got a couple of knockdowns. I'd like this to be, zoned so I can put up 10 units, that they don't give you the same hard time and listen to the one complaint in the neighborhood where somebody raises an objection. They go, oh, well, sorry, man, can't do it for you. That is so important.
And that's changed. I could sit here and I could go on a rant about government for 4 hours. Like, I can really go off on it, but I'm actually optimistic for the first time in my career too, because like I said, all 4 or 3 levels of government are working on this. So just an example, at the federal level, CMHC has come out with a new program for builders where if you jump over, a couple of hurdles in terms of environment and low income, you can apply for a program that lets you borrow 95% of the cost to build a new apartment building.
Yeah. As
soon as you're done, you can then port that into a long-term mortgage with a 50-year amortization. So the theory is that 50 years, your monthly payments will be lower, Mr. Builder. So now you can afford to rent that property out for less. So that'll help the lower income crowd. So that's at the federal level. Back in February, Ontario, the province of Ontario, because like I said, it is a local problem, municipal problem. So there's limited stuff to what the province and the federal can do. But province of Ontario came up with a 50-point plan of how they wanted to make the application process go smoother. And what some of the things that came up, let's eliminate the step where people can, your NIMBY crowd, your NIMBY neighbors can complain about your new development, right? So they're putting limitations on that.
Yes.
The BC government came out with something and they're suggesting that they take certain powers away from the municipal government. So you're not allowing those NIMBY crowd to really do. So the local level can still kind of plan in general the area structure plan and what they want to see where, but the individual application wouldn't be left up to the local group at all. So you won't see these longer timelines. So there's lots of movements afoot to kind of increase the speed of the application process and reduce the fees. Just a real quick story about that in Calgary. Actually, like I said, I could bitch for a long time about government. I as I'm talking to people across the country, I'm actually realizing that Calgary and Edmonton are pretty good. But so we had, let's say you do want to knock down that old house and build the Four-Plex. In Calgary, the fee for that is $100 per new unit. In Kitchener, Ontario, it's $15,000 per new unit. In Barrie, Ontario, it's $65,000 per new unit.
Wow.
And I've heard that 50% of the cost of a new condo in Vancouver is city fees and permits and inspections.
Yes.
And all that.
Yes.
So it can get pretty stupid. And, there's no greater example than Vancouver Island. And, Victoria's awful because, they got quite a left-wing progressive, so they hate the development. It's a year and a half to 2 years to get a permit there. Just an hour outside of Vancouver is Langford, or Victoria's Langford. It takes it takes 2 months to get a permit. Further up the island, Parksville, Qualicum, they're in that same 2 to 3 month level. Nanaimo is 8 months. Souk, BC is a year and a half too. So it's literally right across the highway, or literally 50 minutes down the street. It can vary that much, right? So, and even in Ontario, there's a lot better places to invest than others. Yeah, so it's a real big deal.
Boy, that's some diligence that you absolutely have to do. You don't want to be buying that lot where across the road it could be 2 months and you're 18 months in the municipality you bought in. Oh, surprise. Wow.
Yeah. $65,000 per lot. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, the times they are changing, and I've read lots of stuff that says the biggest hurdle to implementing some of the policies that government officials at all levels are always talking about is the Nimbyism, the not in my backyard a power of the single family homeowner to stop development. And,
Right.
like you say, they're going to take away some powers from municipalities. So I think the best example of that I know right now is New Zealand, where that very forward-looking prime minister of theirs, Jacinda Ardern, has led the battle on saying across the country, sorry, everybody has the right to build at least 4 units on their lot, and no municipality can say anything about that. Plus, they've loosened up a whole bunch of other. Now, I know it's New Zealand, and I know it's a smaller country, and I know that they have a federal government. I don't think they have provincial governments. They've got feds and municipals. A little easier to do there, but that will, I think, spur on other levels of government to grow a set of cojones and to take the step to do what has to be done, which is, if you want more densification and if you want less sprawl, we got to get out of the way of the people who want to do this. So
it's 100%, maybe not 100%, but it's almost always a supply thing, right? A supply and demand.
Yeah.
And there's huge demand. And sometimes the government screw up. The federal government put in a new process in place to give younger people more money to buy. Well, that just kind of exacerbates the demand. It doesn't help the supply. Yeah. But the real carrot and the stick they have is that, as you pay your taxes, it goes to the federal government and then it goes down to the province and then that trickles down to the municipalities. So the province has the hammer that says, if you want to get this money, you're going to step in line and you're going to make this easier, right? So, and that way, you'll know this as a negotiator. The first rule of negotiation is to blame someone else. So right now, the local politician is scared of losing the vote for that NIMBY crowd. So they say, yeah, okay, I'll support you. Well, now they can just throw their hands back and say, I'd love to support you, but it's not my call anymore, right? So they can just say the provincial government's taken it out of I don't control that anymore. So I think you do need to come at that kind of higher level to kind of get some of the stuff done. So.
Okay. Now, Donna and Wayne are monitoring. Any questions we need to deal with at the moment, or can we carry on, Donna? Because I'm not watching the feed here. I'm talking to Darcy. I rely on my team to tell me whether there's questions answered.
There's a few, but you can keep talking. Keep
going for a while? All right. Catch those at the end then. So, over the years, Darcy, I've kind of, from sad client experience, been a little gun shy on the developing side because I haven't been involved in that very much myself. But I've had any number of people who, after they bought 2 or 3 houses, long-term buy and hold style, without really any other experience, have leapt from that strategy to being a developer. So, example, my client had done, 2, 3, 4 buy and holds. And then he announced one day that he and his friend had bought, to buy a whole quarter section. It was just 40. Doesn't matter. A big chunk of land near Edmonton. And their plan was that because his friend had earth moving equipment and because he had the real estate expertise, they were going to be developers. It was Stony Plain.
Yeah.
Stony Plain, Parkland County. They were going to be developers. And I went, dude. I actually didn't say that because I'm an old guy and I wouldn't say dude. But I probably should have.
Said, man.
I said, man, what are you thinking of? What are you thinking of? Developing is a different game. What do you know about the county? What have they said? What about this? What about? I gave him a whole bunch of whatabouts, and he sloughed me off and was confident that he could do it. And then he got into what you have to do with the county and what you have to do with your lender. And I kept writing 3-page letters to him about everything that was going to go sideways and why I was really worried about him. And of course, in the end, it all went sideways. They had no clue. They lost the property. They lost a whole whack of money. And I've got other stories of other folks who jumped from, being a buy and hold person with really no developing experience into the developing game, and it was disastrous for them. So let's talk about how our listeners can, how they can avoid that.
Well, first of all, take my course. But
good idea.
Actually, so a couple of things about that. That was me. Like, and part of that was maybe your friend just didn't like flips or didn't like the long-term buy and hold. So I find that a lot. I find most of my mentorship clients and most of the people I deal with, they kind of get into real estate investing in their kind of middle or early to mid 30s. All there is out there, 95% of all the education is flips and rentals. So I guess I'll pick one of those. And then what happens if you don't like it after a couple, right? So then you start looking around, right? So I came back from South America. I was in there for 5 years doing as a computer guy. I made a little money. I came back. I didn't want to see a computer again. So I got into real estate and I did flips. You got to do something. So I tried flips. So I did about 15 flips. And then I had a 1950s house on a nice sized lot, and then the person next to me passed away. So I ended up buying the house next to him and another 50s. I was going to demolish them, I was just going to do flips. But then I said, you know what, this is a good opportunity. So there's no books at the time about any of that stuff. There's no courses. So it was all just learning by the seat of my pants. But what I did was I actually moved off the two buildings. I didn't even have to demolish them. Somebody came to me and bought them. And they got moved off, and so I thought that was the greatest thing in the world, right? I don't have to spend 10 grand to demolish these houses. Somebody's actually going to pay me. Real funny, quick story there is somebody approached me and said, buy both these houses for $4,000 each, so $8 grand. So that was the budget to tear them down. So I think that's great. House moving company shows up one day, and that's awesome to see a house move like that. That's pretty cool. Everybody should see that at least once. So they're jackhammering the foundation. They're putting these big 15-inch I-beams through. They're jacking them up. They moved the house off. It was really cool. And then the owner of the company, at the end of the day, the house moving company says, I'd have bought these off you for $15,000 each. You know that, right? I said, no, I didn't. What do you mean? He said, well, the guy that approached you, all he does is every week he goes down to City Hall and checks for all the demolition permits, and then he comes and talks to you. So he made the spread of $11,000 times two, where you could have done that. So whatever. Anyways, so so I moved them off, and so two of the lots, I subdivided those into 4. 2 of the lots were already serviced for the old houses, so I put new servicing in the other 2. I could have sold that then as a pure land development play. I decided to go build the houses on my own. So I built 2 houses on the outside, 2 single-family homes, and then a duplex in the middle. So that was kind of my foray into this. If you just had one house, the 1930s house I talked about, knock it down, you could do that. Mm-hmm. Sure. Make sure, what we learn in the course, make sure you're in the right area, kind of don't just jump into it, kind of get a little bit of education first. But that's a really good kind of first kick at the can or getting your toes wet is something like that. To go buy 40 acres in Parkland, that's a bit of a jump. But that was my next step, right? So after I did that, so I went from I built a house, my own personal residence, to going to this 4. And then I bought 7 acres of land in Calgary here, subdivided into 36 lots. And then I built 36 duplexes. So that was not necessarily recommended either, is that from 1 to 4 to 36, that might be a little bit pretty big jump there. So, but anyway, so didn't kill me. So
didn't kill you, but I think you said that was my experience when I'm talking about how badly this went for my clients. I don't know if you meant that I did the same sort of thing and it went badly for me, or you started out and didn't go so badly. So if you had disasters that.
If you've got a coach and you've got planning and you think about it first, okay, so I've got the opportunity to buy 40 acres in Parkland County, and you go down and talk to the city, and here's what the existing zoning is, and here's what they're allowing. And then you put your budget together, you talk to your team, you hire the civil engineer. I kind of, what I teach in the course, what I like to say is, I like to kind of get your feet wet a little bit at a time, so don't spend all your money. So I have 2 kind of main decision points. I call them decision point A and B. So basically, find the area you're going to work with. What do they need? Then go maybe find some land. You haven't spent any money yet. You don't own the land yet. You're doing kind of a really quick back napkin. It can be sold anytime, so you got to do this kind of quickly. But okay, so everything looks good. So now decision point A, do I continue? If yes, well, now I've got to tie up the land. So that's where the agreements for sale and options can come in. Partnering with the seller is another great way to do that. So you want to tie up the land without buying it for this, let's say 6 or 8 months that you're going to be in the application stage. So then you're going to have to spend a little bit of money with engineers to kind of do a high-level site plan, maybe get some high-level costing together and stuff. So now I know a little bit more. I've got something to show, an actual drawing of what I want to do. I show that to the city or the county or whoever. I can show that to my finance team, my mortgage broker. So I can, is everybody kind of on board? So I can, again, I haven't spent a lot of money. Maybe less, $5,000 to $10,000 on engineers is all I've spent, maybe, to kind of get to that decision point B. So I use the analogy: decision point A is you're in the lake up to your ankles. Decision point B, you're up to your knees. And then now I got a really good idea of what's going to happen. Is this going to make sense or not? And then now I can go ahead and then get the engineers involved in doing the full blueprints and construction drawings and getting actual quotes from trades and all that. So you're kind of getting in a little bit at a time, as opposed to just buying 40 acres in Parkland because my buddy's got an earth mover, right? So get it a little bit at a time, spend your money a little bit at a time until you're sure, and then you can go hard. And
proper plan.
It could well be that you get to decision point B and it doesn't make sense. It made sense at a higher level at decision point A. It doesn't make sense now. So you let the land go. You spent $5,000 on engineers, but now you know more about that specific county or that specific area and what's involved. And now you've got a good idea of what it costs to kind of, what's it cost for a linear foot of or linear yard of asphalt to be put in and all that. So you've got a much better idea for the next one.
Okay. Well, let's look at a question or two here. Question: can Darcy speak to the range of densification with a basic lot? What outside factors determine if a four-plex can be built on a lot versus a duplex if zoning allows for either? Oh, that's interesting.
If zoning allows for others. Okay, so basically we start with what the municipality, I always talk about needs. Just because you want to develop land that's going to have an apartment building doesn't necessarily mean that the area needs it. Maybe they already got. So there's outside factors, the normal market conditions. Do we need more of this specific product? That's one of the things I'd think about, as long as anything's allowed. But typically, in order to make it easy too, I think land development, any of these micro strategies, it boils down to, and I've done, small, medium and large developments. I was instrumental in getting the new racetrack built in Northern Calgary, right? It's Northeast Calgary, right across Iron Mall. There we were partnered with Ivanhoe Cambridge and all that. So I've done some pretty big stuff too. Land development's basically all the same. It involves what's the zoning now? So basically, what's the zoning, density, usage, and bylaws now? And what do I want it to be? So what do I have to change to make my vision kind of be fulfilled? And then after that, it's out with the old and in with the new. And what do I mean by that is when you approach a lot, let's say it's got that 1930s house, what's on that lot that I don't want, that doesn't fit my new vision? The house, concrete basement, there's probably a garage in the back, there's a pad there, there's some sidewalk, there's maybe some trees, whatever, right? So all that goes in. That's out with the old. I got to get rid of all that. Then in with the new is what do I have to do to get it ready for builder? Because for me, it's two things. Land development is getting land ready for a builder, and new construction is taking a service lot and building something on it, right? So our goal here is to get, if we're not going to physically build it ourselves, is to get the land ready for a builder. So in with the new is what's new. So basically, anytime I look at a property, whether it's a big project, medium or small, that's all consistent. That's all the same. So what outside factors is basically, what can I do? What physically can I do? What can I afford to do? Maybe your budget doesn't match your the mind's eye of what you want to build there. So basically, those are some of the other things that come into factor. But that's if, a lot of people, sometimes people think that land development is hard. Well, if you could just break it down to that, out with the old and in with the new, psychologically in your head, it kind of makes it a lot easier. And that converts really easy to a to-do list, right? Here's the to-do list of everything I have to do. And it makes it, you just knock things off one at a time. It makes it a lot easier.
Yeah. Step by step. So just for that last question for the Facebook user, or Facebook participant, I mean, you can always have a really good start. If you just like reading things, you can look at any municipality's zoning bylaw, and they are quite detailed about what they are allowing you to build in what circumstances. So if you just want to dip your toe in the water and you can start out doing that. There's lots more to it, but that's a good place to start.
Actually, if I can just add on something, that's a good point too, Barry, is that, as we said a bit earlier, the real strength here is being able to find stuff, right? And we spend about, the course is 11 hours of online video, take at your own speed. 6 hours is how to find it, how to fund it, how to structure it, which I know is kind of the biggest questions that people ask in any strategy.
Yeah.
So if you can get good at finding it, it's a real key, and you can really put yourself up ahead of the competition. One of the keys for that, tying in with your bylaws, is if you can get good at zoning maps, which nobody talks about. That's how I found out that Garneau, has already rezoned the entire area to be low-rise, or low-rise apartments, right? So if you can get good at that, it's really puts you a step ahead of your fellow investors.
That's good. That's really good coaching. That's really good coaching. What did JD Cabral say there? JVB. What are strategies to control the property until zoning change is completed by the city? Strategies to control the property. Yeah, good one.
So that's where, Barry's teachings of agreements for sale and options come into place. The trouble is, if, like you said, you want to get in a little bit at a time. So if you buy the land and it doesn't look good after your initial kick the can, or you don't get the approval that you want, now you're stuck with this land. Can you sell it and recoup your money? So it's a much better idea. Not always possible. I'm realistic, but if you can just control it for that time, 4 months, 6 months, 8 months, whatever it takes you to get your approval, through an agreement for sale, through an option, through a longer due diligence period on a normal offer, or partnering with the seller. If you can do kind of some of those strategies, you're way ahead, because that way, if things don't work out, you can just kind of walk away. Maybe you lose a small deposit, a non-refundable deposit. With that racetrack, for example, we were just outside the city limits, and we couldn't get water to the land, right? It took us like 2 or 3 years to get water, because there was a big 36-inch diameter pipeline feeding Airdrie from Calgary. And the then Mayor Dave Brown-Cogney was pissed that we put the racetrack outside the city limits, so he didn't let us take it, right? So we had an option to buy this farmer's field, and he had a limit of about 6 months. He wouldn't go past 6 months. So every time the 6 months passed, we had to put another option to purchase, non-refundable deposit down. We actually ended up doing about 4 of those before we finally got everything figured out. But again, it was cheaper than buying the land. And
that's a great place for the option strategy. And when we're talking about it, people aren't too familiar with options, and that's one of the things that we always talk about. Is it's a way to control a piece of property for often not too much money, while you're figuring out what's going on. You can actually surprisingly get control of properties for longer than you think, for way less money than you think. Especially if you're prepared to say to a seller, well, I know you were looking to sell. You say, Bill Smith was actually interested in, by all means, if Bill wants to buy it, you let him buy it. And so options are not used as much as they can. I think, especially at the lower development level, I think they're far more common at the racetrack level than they are at the lower level, but people should know more about them. But
one other thing too is as I've reached out and talked to people all across the country, I'm really gaining appreciation for you too. There is a very, very, very small amount of lawyers that understand JV contracts and agreements for sale and options.
Yeah.
Your normal lawyer is just, can I help you sell your house, your personal residence, or can I help you buy your personal residence? It's like an assembly line. So guys like Barry are very, very, very rare indeed. So.
Well, lawyers don't get themselves in trouble by saying, gee, that doesn't sound like a good idea. That sounds risky. You never get in trouble for saying no. Sometimes you get yourself in a lot of trouble going, wow, that's a good one. Let's work on that together. And then it all blows up. Yeah. But yeah, you're right. That's one of the things about creative is you need folks on both sides who understand strategy. So Got another question here from Melissa. What would be the approximate cost of tear down and takeaway? Is that maybe demolishing a house, do we think?
Yeah. So it again depends where you are in the country, but typically that's, let's say 5 to 10,000. But also always, like my story told, check to see if they'll take it. Because a lot of times, if it's still in relatively good shape, these house movers, they'll then sell it to somebody in a rural area, or they get used as hunting and fishing cabins up in the north. So, I mean, there's, it might be too far gone that nobody wants it, but always double check, because it's sure better to put 5 or 10 grand in your pocket than spend 5 or 10 grand.
I have heard from a few people that you have to be careful on the demolition side, because with the greening of how everything is being looked at, there are some restrictions or tightening around what can go to the landfill. One client said, yes, there was really terrible asbestos in the lath and plaster, I think, that was in this old house. Yep. And so we had really a tough time getting a permit, and it cost a whole bunch more money. So are there things people have to watch out on the demo side, or is it usually fairly straightforward?
It's usually fairly straightforward. You can kind of almost always tell by the age of the house too, right? So pre-1930s, 1940s, they used asbestos to actually make the drywall with. Mm-hmm. And then after that, they just used it for the mud. So if you were to take a 1940s to 1960s house, 1970s house, the cracks, the seams between the drywall will probably have not huge amounts, parts per million of it, but there'll be some asbestos there before they kind of outlawed it in the 70s. Mm-hmm. Even doing flips or renos, if you see that 8-inch by 8-inch tile in an older house, that's asbestos as well, right? So if you don't move it, the thing about asbestos, if you don't move it, it doesn't bother anybody, right? It's got to be disturbed to kind of get in the air. So often on a flip, I would just, put subfloor right over, or put, another sheet of subfloor right over that, and not even disturb the old tile or whatever. So, but the guys that do this, professional demolition companies, they know that. So again, let your experts take care of that kind of stuff, right? So
they would know those, those kinds of things. Well, a couple more questions. Here we are. Does zoning change only for the specific address?
So each piece of property that's licensed, or that's set up with land titles, every unique address has its own specific zoning that it is now, and then it'll also have the bylaws that apply to it. So basically, that what's a permitted use and what's a discretionary use is what they kind of say. So you're permitted to do this. Maybe you're permitted to have a daycare on it or whatever, right? So that's usage. And then discretionary means, okay, we're probably going to allow it, but you're still going to have to make the application and let us kind of review it. So, but it is, lot by lot, address by address is how all this works.
Yeah. If you look to do a zoning change for a particular piece of property, it is only for that property. It doesn't change all the properties around it.
Right.
All right. With the city's goal of increasing population, do you expect new development in the Edmonton area will be more mixed-use buildings or simply higher density? Oh, good question.
Mixed use in terms of part commercial, part residential. Are we guessing that? Everything's going to be higher density going forward. I think in those municipalities that are more pro-development and more forward-thinking, everything's going to be higher density. The fight before with the NIMBY crowd was, I just want single-family homes here, and the fight was to get a duplex. Now the fight is to get a 4 units or 6 units. That's kind of the fight. So it's kind of unfair as people in the older generations. We have our Canadian dream, realize we got our house, single-family home, and now we're kind of locking the door that saying those after us can't get done, right? So it's kind of unfair to sit there and say, yeah, I really like my house with the green lawns and everything, and everything looks the same. I don't want a duplex here or a fourplex there, but that, those times are changing. It's coming where we're all going to have duplex.
Yeah, it's coming. A lot of our folks coming as new Canadians come from places where
Yeah.
Density is the name of the game. They're not, I mean, they're surprised that there's any single family houses.
Yeah,
So,
exactly.
to say that maybe a four-plex or a six-plex will show up in their neighborhood is not really a revelation to them, for sure.
My thing is, I personally believe, and this is kind of weird after I was fix-it-up guy for years, but I think anything older than 1960 should get torn down. Obvious exceptions if it's got architectural or historical value, but for the most part, the cookie cutter things they threw up in the 30s, 40s, and 50s, they have no architectural or historical value. So, but yet, one house, 800 or 1,000 square feet on a 50-foot lot. That's a really inefficient use of space, right? We could do so much better. Yeah. And I know it's not what we're used to, but let's just tear those down. They're old. They're not very well built. They got asbestos. They've got next to no insulation, single pane glass. They got aluminum wiring. The old pipe that are rusting through. So why would you even want to renovate that? Like we talked at the beginning, it's so expensive to renovate. You're better off to just push it down and build something new. So I really think that's what I said. That's the next big thing over the next 5 years is doing that.
And I think people should understand that the rules around renovating, what you have to do, they're tightening. Yeah. They're tightening. Insurance companies are leading the charge for making sure that properties are upgraded, and they can come along and say, yeah, we're checking the records. You have aluminum wiring. You have to change that. And you go, but I have to. They go, I know, but sorry, that's what you got to do. And they are calling the tune in many sectors for what people can do with their property.
Yeah. Or like I had a 1940s motel, drive,
mm-hmm.
go for a vacation back in the 50s, stop at a motel. I turned that into a kind of an apartment building for the lower income crowd. And last year I went for replacement insurance and I couldn't get it. We shopped the market. It was just impossible. So of course the bank freaked out. So they added a little surcharge onto my loan for each month. But it was literally impossible. And you're going to see more and more and more.
Yeah, that's something for folks to be aware of is I would never go unconditional on a property that needed insurance without having a clause in my contract that said subject to buyer obtaining insurance satisfactory to buyer.
Because if it still has aluminum, it's almost impossible to get insurance as well. Right?
Yeah, so there's some workarounds there, but the insurance guys are really, really tightening things up, and it's only going to get worse. It's only going to get worse. So that's a real big factor. Yeah. Now, Donna's just put up a note here that, she sweet talked you into giving our group an exclusive discount on your course. Oh, not a chance to set it up. Anyway, Donna's going to do a coupon code. And she'll let people know what's going on. So, folks, I just want to say that as an educator, I absolutely believe in spending a little bit of money to get some education, because if you don't, you will spend a whole whack of money in the School of Hard Knocks getting your education. So if you're interested in developing, you should seriously investigate Darcy's course and study hard and ask questions and work yourself up into the mix before you start spending your hard-earned money. Just because you think it's a good idea, like my friend with the 40 acres and the friend with an earth mover. So don't be that person.
I've spent the money over the years and I've made the mistakes. I used to say, as a computer guy, if I screwed up, I just have to stay late and fix stuff. It didn't used to cost me any money. As a real estate investor, if I screw up, typically I'm writing a check to somebody to fix my problem for me.
Yeah.
So,
checks and big checks.
Yeah.
Well, Darcy, thank you very much for coming on and helping us out here. I've really, really enjoyed this whole thing. It's been illuminating for me in lots of ways. And, I think I know quite a bit about this stuff, but I've learned a lot of things today, which I appreciate. So thank you a whole bunch. Donna, you will take care of all of the codes and coupons and all that. Don't I always, says Donna. And the answer is yes to that. She does.
Yeah. If you're interested in the course, by all means, get in touch with Donna and we'll work it out, how that all gets figured out after that. Yeah.
All right. Well, last thing, we often have folks on again because, they take a course, they go, we need more of Darcy. So look to maybe doing this down the road again. And I'd love to do that. So thank you very much.
I would love to come back. This is, like I said, I had that issue in 2018 and trying to figure out my why. This is my why. I really get a kick out of doing this.
Yeah,
kind of
well,
stuff. Yeah, I love it.
Nothing like being passionate about what you do, and I can tell you are. So, so thanks again. Good night, everybody. We'll see you again next time. Thanks,
Excellent.
Darcy.
Thanks, everybody. Take care.
Bye-bye.